Okay, somebody asked me about back pressure training. So my current back pressure training has not yet been validated, meaning because I do my maxing out pretty rarely, like more rarely than once a month, maybe once in 1.2 months. So I haven't yet maxed out. I don't know how my current training is going. But in this video, I'm just gonna ramble about like what I have noticed so far about isometric training. Okay, little reminder: this in the playlist of in this channel there is a playlist isometric strength training. There is a video the science. All right, in the science there was the PubMed study, a review of isometric strength training programs, which then stated or summarized that for the strength, you should 1 second to 5 second hold time, 30 to 90 seconds in total in 1 second hold time, total hold time. All right, whatever you choose, if you hold it 1 second, then you do it 90 reps. All right, intensity 80 to 100%, 3 times per week. All right, so I'm just gonna give an example what that means. If you have a 3 second hold time and you are aiming for that 90 second, and you countering that this is for one session, meaning you need to do this 3 times a week, it's 90 lifts per week. All right, 90 lifts which last 3 seconds per week. All right, and that's a huge amount of volume. All right, so what I have realized is that isometric strength training is actually way more time consuming than dynamic strength training. Like dynamic strength training is like side plays compared to this. Like you don't have to be even halfway to do that. Like, but this, and sadly, I have come to realize that you might even be better off doing even more, because like I have these lifts here all around, and when I started I had 3 different types of lifts which all targeted the wrist. Like I had the rolling turtle without the thumb, then I had this thing, I hold it just like this, the handle, then I had the plate hold. All right, and I was doing them all in the session, like back to back, with all the pinch things and this. But I had only one like pinch thing. I had only one fingers movement and stuff like that, and only one riser thing, and only one pronation thing. Meaning then that my wrist got 3 different variations, but also it got 3 times the volume of everything else, because I was just doing them as a separate thing, meaning that I was doing this, then I might take pinch, and then I do something else, then I do this other wrist thing, and then the other wrist thing, and then, they were treated in my program as like just another lift, not as if, again, training the wrist. All right? And meaning that I was doing my program then was that I was doing like 50 of these cycles a week, like going through every lift and just lifting it, once and not reading it, lifting it once. And from all of these lifts, my wrist developed it the most. Like it's just developed until evolved. Strength went up and up. And it was getting 3 times the volume, meaning that I was doing 150 lifts per week for wrist. But on top of that, it had 3 variations. So was it the volume or was it the variation? I don't know yet. I'm just reporting my findings here, where I am at the moment. But this video is mostly about back pressure. But I'm just throwing out this because back pressure is an isometric strength training thing. You are training isometric strength. And the better word in this channel used for back pressure is a pocket pull. You are not doing this isometrically, you are doing this. Combination of elbow flexion statically and side pressure static. Alright? So, and the question of which this video rambling shit is about was that the person asked, how do I train back pressure? How do I keep myself accountable in the lift? Alright? So, there is, in my current training, I haven't yet fully applied the isometric strength training protocol to my elbow flexion and back pressure things. I'm kind of easing into it, I'm applying it mildly and seeing does that give me better gains. If little bit of this system gives me better gains, then I increase the amount. If increasing the amount gives me even better gains, then I increase it even more, until I'm doing with this the same I'm doing with everything else, But I'm not just blindly applying the whole system to it and you just wishing for the best, I'm kind of easing into it with the upper body things, because they might be a little different because they are bigger muscles. Your bicep is a bigger muscle. Elbow flexions muscles are bigger muscles than, wrist muscles and riser muscle, So there might be a difference that the recoverability might be worse, Kind of like if you squat. Squatting is a lot more taxing for you than doing a wrist curls, So that kind of thing. So I'm kind of easing into it. But to address the question how you keep your back pressure strict, So here is how I keep my back pressure strict, alright? Okay, I don't know how well this turns out because this is not the typical layout. But anyways, in my opinion, you keep the back pressure lift strict by having a very low elbow pad. Like I have just this towel, and when my elbow, is on it, obviously it sinks into it. Because when this is very high, okay, let me explain why it is good that this is very low, meaning it's on the level almost of the table. All right. In this back pressure lift, when you try to get over this 90-degree angle, which would be about here, like when you try to get over it, if your elbow is elevated a lot, you can get over it with open ankles. All right? Because if I do it with this, note that if I'm trying to get over this, I'm like the lift is isometric because I'm just doing the motion by leaning. All right? But because this is so low, there comes a point where I cannot lean no more. Like my humerus is on the table. So if this angle, and I'm pulling here, like isometrically, applying force here and not here. But anyways, like if this would have opened my angle, like let's say I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do this, but this opens my angle. And I go here to this angle. Now I try to lift it. I only get to this position. Now humerus is on the table. I cannot get this over this position anymore. You know, I get stuck here. So it's a clear failure in the movement. Like you could even have this lower, so that this stops here. If this is not tight enough, I can only get here, like over this position, when this is tight. Because then when I hit, humerus hits the table, this is already over the hardest position. But this opened, I cannot get it. I cannot lower the humerus. I cannot get over this position. All right? So how you then keep yourself accountable in the back pressure is that you have pretty low elevation for the elbow, so that you cannot like do this. You cannot like, let's say I would do it on like here on the edge of the table. I cannot just do this, you know. But at the moment, again, this is what I do at the moment, and this is not validated system yet. All right, I'm kind of working on it. But since like borrowing again the knowledge from the grip guys, like this is now rotation based movement. I'm doing this, you know, I'm rotating around the elbow. So since that is not optimal in the plate curl, it might not be optimal also in this. And therefore in my back pressure training, isometric training system, I do not do volume like I think you should think about isometric strength training in terms of work volume, time under tension, you know? How long, if you hold something for 6 seconds, like it doesn't really matter is that weight 90 kilos or 80, like is that weight 90% of U1 repetition maximum or is it 80% of U1 repetition maximum? You just put more those quality holds into your week, you know, instead of like every time trying to get a PR, because that chasing those PRs will stall your strength. Your nervous system will just zap out. Like, in my opinion, it might be better just to think about how much hold time you have in the week, you know. And then if the weight feels too light, you add a little bit more, you know, just a little bit more. But then you have a separate like maxing out day in which you actually look what is your max. But these all other weekly systems you're doing, you are not even caring about like maxing anything, you know? You don't even worry about it. And you avoid it because it might actually sap your nervous system and cause too much fatigue, and now you feel weaker, all right? Because I have noticed that happens. If I like get to higher weights and then I jump there and try that weight, and then I do, and then next day what I was previously feeling like easy weight, now it feels heavy, you know. So that kind of thing. So at the moment I had kind of four back pressure variations. I don't know, is it optimal to have the more variations? Because it was working for the wrist, I'm just borrowing that here without knowing is it the variation or the triple volume. I'm just taking it as is and applying it to the back pressure. So I have 4 variations of the back pressure. First is this, that I just hold this. I look what is the angle, the hardest position. Let's say it's this. And then I just hold it 6 seconds and put it down. I don't even lift it. I just held it with my other arm. Hold here 6 seconds. So that you are pulling to this shoulder. Obviously, it's sub-maximal weights, but you have to pull it to this shoulder. Hold it here for both arms, 6 seconds. And then this box lift. I don't know, like I have a setup like this. In the box there is weights, and I just lifted up the box pocket pull variation. Hold it for 6 seconds, put it down. The hold method again. And then the third variation is the pot hang. I put the pot on the ceiling and hang 6 seconds from that. And then the fourth variation is the thermos pull, where you do this, hold it like this by leaning. All right. So, and I do 2 of them because there are in this and this are kind of like the same thing, and the thermos and the pot are kind of like the same thing, meaning they are without pulling the elbow down, and in this you are not really pulling elbow down nor in that. So one of these at the morning and one of those at the morning, so 2, and the other one of these at the evening and the other one of those at the evening. So I gonna get 2 reps, 2 holds a day, evening and morning. Obviously nothing crazy, and obviously you don't go near you maxing weights, like this is just putting in the volume work. You are holding 80 to, like, you're holding 70 to 80% of one repetition maximum weight for 6 seconds. All right, evening and morning. Okay, so that's that. And okay, let me also. Okay, this is good example what I mean by the high, having your elbow high. Like, look at what happens when Hermes does this lift regarding having elbow on this elbow pad, which means that he can lower the humerus so that it points down. All right, when he does this lift. All right, look, if he would do this on a table, he couldn't get lower than this. All right, now his humerus would be flat on the table. All right, but because his elbow is elevated, he can now lower the humerus even more. All right, there. Now his humerus is really in a down angle. All right, and note that he is doing this lift so that the elbow flexion is more than 90 degrees, which he can only do when the elbow is elevated. So if you want to do this strict, do not keep the elbow elevated. All right, so that's one method of having this back pressure being strict. And you also start under the hardest position and then go over the hardest position, so that you just don't, so that you are actually, then there is actually something to be, it's quantifiable what you did, you are just not jerking the thing, so that's something to think about. Okay, last more thing, like in this channel we have kind of take a little peek on Reno Masick training system and Todd Hodkins training system. And this comment is not to be taken as criticism of what they do or that you shouldn't do what they do. But I'm just pointing out a little bit of a something to think about, which is that note that rhinomasic training system seems to be based on powerlifting training system, meaning linear periodization. Like if you look at the megacycle structure, it seems to be like taken from that and applied to arm wrestling. And then you look, probably already know that Todd Hopkins system is taken from West Side Barbell system, which is on the other hand block periodization system, which again is a powerlifting training system. But note that they are both powerlifting training systems. All right? And powerlifting is about dynamic strength, whereas arm wrestling is about isometric strength. All right? So, what I'm pointing out here is that something to think about, that is it optimal to take a dynamic training system and try to make it isometric instead of taking an isometric training system and applying it to arm wrestling. All right? Just something to think about. Not saying you shouldn't do these training systems. Not saying I would be stronger than these guys. Obviously, I'm not. Obviously, I would lose to this sport. But just saying as a statement, which you can evaluate the truth value of the statement itself as a thought, independent of who said it. Meaning that, in my opinion, it might hinder your journey to get to the optimal system if you are trying to track along a framework which is fundamentally meant for dynamic strength development. You know, you are ending up dragging along these rubinants, these like wet thistle things, these ornaments, which are okay, they were valid for the dynamic work, but why are you keeping them? You know, you are doing isometric things, you know. So kind of like if you look at Devon's training system, Devon's training system is just isometric training system. All right, he just does 16 sets every day of. Not saying that's better system than their system, all right? I'm just saying that there seems to be a little bit of a jump in logic. Something needs to be like justified if you just take a powerlifting system and apply it to arm wrestling. All right? Obviously, it's good if you are like want to develop like stick curl or something like that. Yeah, then go for it. Great. Then it works for that, probably. But when you're talking about these isometric training strengths, then to me, if somebody will pitch me the idea that let's do this, let's take a powerlifting system and apply it to arm wrestling, then I would have a question: why? Why don't we take an isometric training system from, for example, grip training and try to fit arm wrestling into that? Just something to think about. And let me add another point here. Note that when Reno wrote on the board static and isometric, like I think what he meant was isometric base training with the isometric. Because note that his statics are cheat reps, pretty much. And cheat reps are in cheat reps, the isometric brace of a dynamic motion is lengthened. All right? So they turn more into isometric movement. throwing that out there that maybe that was what he meant. That Reno doesn't actually, in his own opinion, train dynamic motion. He trains lengthened isometric phase dynamic motions. It's then isometric training also, but a different kind of isometric training. So it could be that also. Not saying the system don't work. I'm not saying it might be little, little bit chaotic to take a powerlifting system and just apply it to arm wrestling, because then you are left with these like ornaments from the powerlifting system. It's all like they are just there because they were there from the powerlifting system, but why? What validates them in the realm of isometric training? Just food for thought when you are building your own isometric training system. Food for thought. Okay, that's all. Bye.